The overall consensus is that Cam Newton was a damn good football player. You can have opinions on his somewhat rollercoaster NFL career, but you kinda have to be a beast to join such an elite list that fewer than 10 people have achieved in the history of the sport. Let's forget the Heisman Trophy, the NFL MVP, and the interesting hats for a second to focus on Cam Newton's early rise. The hat part might be hard just because there are so many, but indulge me if you will. Because there was a time when none of that success looked remotely possible. A period where people didn't even regard him as a quarterback. A waste of talent who found himself at the bottom ranks of football. Let's meet those versions of Cam Newton in the Prism. Oh, hey there. If you didn't know about our Patreon, then you need to change that. You can find tons of exclusive stuff every Monday, like early releases of episodes, our podcast, and so much more. Treat yourself and subscribe. But for now, let's get back to the action. Sometimes all it takes is the right people to recognize your value. Standing at 6'5" and 235 pounds, Cam dominated as quarterback at Westlake High School in Georgia, earning top honors as a collegiate prospect. A ranking of that nature typically indicates schools see star potential in the player, but many universities didn't see it that way for Cam, at least not at quarterback. While he did receive multiple offers, some programs recruited him out of position. Or coaches just saw him as an afterthought at QB as they waited for other recruits they preferred to sign. Looking at you, Steve Spurrier. A damn good athlete that could still be a force at another spot? Sure. But someone to lead an offense with limited passing abilities? Nah. However, Cam stood strong in his signal calling beliefs, and of the schools that offer him a scholarship at quarterback, he chose the University of Florida. On paper, the decision made a ton of sense. With the Gators, Cam would have the opportunity to join a squad fresh off a natty and vie for immediate playing time in an offensive scheme that fit his skill set under head coach Urban Meyer. When he arrived in Gainesville, Cam wowed his teammates with his natural talent whenever he hit the field. This is a squad fresh off a championship, saying their program had a bright future because of an incoming freshman. With more experience and fine-tuning, Cam's potential was through the roof, and experts believe the Gators wouldn't have any issues handing him the keys to the offense when the time came. However, the thing about potential is you first have to grow, and Cam got in his own way. An early season injury in his sophomore season is a fair enough excuse for a delay in his development. This is real life, and we can't turn off injuries like in a video game, but getting hurt may have left Cam a little too much time on his hands. In November 2008, he was arrested and charged with multiple felony counts. Cam left his coach bewildered by the move. Look, I'm not a detective or one to judge, as college kids and hell, even adults make stupid mistakes, but when you look into the specifics of the arrest, it speaks volumes about Cam's immaturity. He allegedly snatched a laptop, which was later reported stolen by another student and traced back to Cam when he tried to log into the school's network with the username C. Newton. Follow me along this ride. Campus PD pulled up to Cam's dorm, spotted the laptop on his desk after he agreed to let him in, and when officers questioned him to confirm the serial number, Cam said he needed some space to speak with his lawyer, not necessarily admitting guilt, just getting his ducks in a row. The officers obliged, and when they returned, there was no laptop to be found. No harm, no foul. Except that said laptop was later found outside a garbage can painted all black, with a finish branding his name in all caps with a white paint on the front, which he allegedly tossed from his dorm window. Cam's attorney later claimed his client bought the laptop from someone and wasn't aware it was stolen, but the added flair of turning the computer into his own personal art project certainly wasn't the best look for that defense. This isn't me condemning a young kid. It's more to emphasize that the laptop incident was part of a string of Cam not taking his opportunities seriously. While teammates gushed about his untapped potential, they also pointed to his carefree attitude and goofiness as a detriment to his success. With Tim Tebow being the clear-cut starter, Members of the Gator squad believed Cam wasn't locked in, which in turn allowed for more practice reps for another highly rated quarterback recruit, John Brantley. You can't dick around when your spot as the number 2 isn't even officially won yet. After the laptop incident where the charges against Cam were ultimately dropped, he served an indefinite suspension and had to watch his backup spot officially go to Brantley as the Gators went on to win another national championship without his involvement. Then the odds were stacked against him even deeper down in the swamp. With Tebow running it back, Brantley rising on the depth chart, and ugly accusations of cheating which weren't officially reported until later, Cam announced his intention to transfer. Athletes in Cam's lowly position rarely expect to move on and reach the top immediately. Cam understood this and switched up his recruitment process in search of a fresh start, aiming to return to upper echelon competition at some point. With limited playing time under his belt, he sought out destinations where he could come in as a starter. Still, his main focus was improving his all-around game, especially developing as a passer rather than being turned into a one-dimensional option quarterback. After careful deliberation with his family, Cam chose Blinn, a small junior college in Brenham, Texas. Going the junior college route was strategic. It allowed Cam to redeem himself and re-enter the top college ranks without losing a year of eligibility. If the goal was getting back to a D1 program, Blinn certainly offered a great path for Cam. Except, Blinn initially wasn't that interested. The Buccaneers head coach Brad Frangione had to be urged by one of his colleagues to take a look into Cam. The ex-Gators' bona fides of backing up a Heisman-winning quarterback were certainly enough to pique Frangione and his staff's interest, but usually where there's smoke, there's fire. Taking on a dude with past legal troubles wasn't necessarily ideal, and Blinn had to make sure everything was smooth before they found themselves deep in a shit show. Once Blinn felt comfy proceeding, Coach Fran discussed X's and O's with Cam and his family to walk through his development, but more than playstyle, Frangione wanted to make sure Cam was prepared for the role. It takes a strong leader to steer a program, and Frangione had to make sure Cam was prepared to put in the work to redefine his image. Once both sides committed, they knew they had a season to reach their goals. Experts considered Blinn's quarterback position stacked with Cam's arrival, given the new transfer and returning backup Sean Rutherford, meaning Cam's spot as the starter wasn't even guaranteed. He had to earn it. Throughout fiery practice sessions, Newton and Rutherford battled it out to see who would be the top guy. And since hitting the quarterback wasn't allowed, Cam's ability to run through a defender's face was nuked, and the competition came down to passing. Rutherford held down the number 1 role for a bit, leaving Cam to hold kicks in practice, which didn't go over well for a dude hell-bent on getting back to D1. Then it happened. Cam had an incredible practice, hardly missing throws and repeatedly finding the end zone with ease, to the point where Rutherford had to give him his props. Cam's teammates recognized his undeniable talent, but despite winning the starting job, they weren't really feeling him. JUCO players frowned upon ex-Division I and 5-star athletes who would come into the building and walk around like their shit don't stink. Their realities were far different. At major D1 programs like Florida, players were treated like royalty, having access to first-class facilities, nutritionists for proper dieting, and what felt like an unlimited amount of money for equipment. Whereas at Blinn, their weight room wasn't big enough for the entire team, and their pregame meals consisted of a hodgepodge of foods that would be the most undesirable combo on any restaurant menu. JUCO players believe that if you came from the top and found yourself slumming it with them, you really must not be as good as you thought you were. It also didn't help that Cam constantly ran his mouth. Whether it was barking at the defense in practice or challenging his coaches in the weight room, it became an everyday routine to hear Cam yapping. The constant talking initially came across as a cocky, disingenuous ex-wannabe star trying to impose his will on a new team, but the folks in Blinn learned that's just genuinely who Cam was. The dude fully believed in himself, and once the squad warmed to his persona, Cam fully won him over with his fierce commitment to the grind both on and off the field. He worked his ass off conditioning in the summer to prep for the season, even tapping in with his teammates on off days to perfect his dropbacks and timing of routes with his receivers. It was Coach Fran who initially proposed some sort of leadership training, but Cam was the one who stayed on top of his coach, demanding new knowledge whenever he caught him slacking. He kept an absurdly detailed notebook charting every play in practice and throughout the season to understand the success rates of certain passes he tossed. He had an obsessive mentality in the film room, dissecting plays repeatedly to the point that the offensive coordinator leaned on him to help install the play script for games. Cam wasn't moving like some hotshot simply seeing Blinn as a stepping stone. He was fully bought in, and his teammates fed off the energy. Maybe it took being humbled and humiliated, finding himself at a level of football he didn't imagine, but Cam's shift in his mindset paid off tremendously. During the 2009 season, he lit up the junior college ranks, putting up absurd numbers en route to leading Blinn to a national championship. I'll spare you the game-by-game details, but I'd be remiss if I didn't let you in on Cam Newton's 503 total yard performance, where he accounted for over half the team's points by himself in a matchup where Blinn dropped a 60 ball on their rivals, Tyler Junior College. The dude started the year as a relatively unknown, getting his name misprinted as Cameron Nelson in local newspapers, but by season's end, he had numerous major programs lining up to secure his talents. The transformation was incredible. While Cam had his pick of the litter during his recruitment, he narrowed his options to 3 schools and ultimately chose Auburn. What followed was a historic run with Cam winning the Heisman and leading the Tigers to a national championship in a year that many regarded as one of the best single-season performances of all time. That superb year was almost tainted by messy pay-for-play accusations involving Cam's dad, Cecil Newton, soliciting funds from Mississippi State. But Cam escaped clean after an NCAA investigation found that him and Auburn had no involvement and Cecil acted alone. After winning the Natty and securing the Heisman, Cam kept rolling and was selected number 1 overall by the Carolina Panthers in 2011 and later achieved one of the league's highest honors. While his NFL career is mostly remembered by a complex mix of incredible highs and some disappointing lows, there is no doubt Cam is anything but a success, especially considering where he started. Major universities cast him aside only to recruit him as a tight end. He had a shot at Florida to succeed a legendary QB in his own right, but squandered that opportunity and found himself down in the lower ranks of football. Cam had to rebuild himself at Blinn and consistently credits his time there as a transformative period that led him to the greatness we've witnessed and remember today. His non-stop grind to better himself in that period is a testament to his success. Not encouraging you, of course, to go out and do mischievous deeds with a laptop, but simply a reminder that when you get knocked down, it's what you do after that people will remember. Thanks for watching this episode of Prism. We're all just one theft away from becoming our best selves. If you enjoyed this, best believe our channel is filled with plenty of more bangers. So stick around and check some stuff out.